Okay. So, welcome everybody to my first attempt at a podcast-ish thing. It's not really going to go on any podcast platform, but it's going to go on my YouTube channel. Haven't tried doing something like this. It's really good. I'm doing it with somebody who I don't feel too afraid of. But I would like to do more of this later. I mean, look at him. He kind of looks like an MMA fighter. But yeah, so me and Quinn here. Quinn Larson is this guy's name, by the way. We did a game together for Ludum Dare, the 48th one. And we just wanted to talk about it and talk about the experience. And I'll probably post this video up on the Ludum Dare site whenever I get it kind of cleaned up and finished and all that stuff. So first off, Quinn, I just wanted to talk about who you are a little bit, just real briefly.
Let's see. I'm from the States, but I live in Japan. I used to work for a game company in Thailand for several years, and now I make games by myself. Trying to get that to a full-time income, but I'm not quite there yet. So game jams are a good chance for me to take a break from my you get yourself kind of lost in your normal dev projects. So game jams are a good chance for me to kind of get away from that and get back to let's just make something for fun and grind through something, get something done and finished and out the door in a short period of time. So that's why I like them. They kind of keep me keep my head in reality.
They force you to put a lid on it.
Drowning in my own work.
Yeah. They force you to put a lid on it. You have a start time, an end time, and It's like whatever happens, that's what happens.
Yeah, I forget. There's a name for this as like a cognitive bias or something. Like Tim Ferriss talks about it, but it's like however much time you give yourself to do something is exactly how much time you'll spend doing it, whether that's required or not. You know, like if university professors are like, you have a week to finish this paper, or this paper is due tomorrow. Students, there won't be a huge difference in quality in the papers, but the amount of time that students will spend on it will be ridiculously different.
I wanted to say you look a lot like Tim Ferriss, so you're clearly you follow him. So
it's not. I haven't modeled my life after Tim Ferriss or anything.
You both got the shaved head, about the same build. You're probably about the same height, I would guess. Are you from NorCal or SoCal?
I was kind of both. I was born in Berkeley, but I lived in Los Angeles and San Diego for a long time. Yeah.
Oh, you lived in San Diego too? I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is all when I was very young.
Yeah.
Except LA. I went back to LA as an adult for a few years.
I lived in San Diego for 15 years. I've been back in Maui for about 2. So basically my entire adult life was in San Diego.
San Diego's great.
Yeah, I loved it.
Perfect weather all day, every day.
I loved it. I still love it now. It says, I looked at your website real quick and stuff. It says that you went to the University of Colorado. So yeah, you've been a couple places. It says you were a mobile device specialist. I forgot the company. I didn't write it down.
Apple. I worked in an Apple store.
Oh, yeah.
As a mobile device specialist. Yeah.
Oh, that was at an Apple store. Okay, cool. And then a gameplay programmer, and then a developer for your own small business, the game development company Ramble House Games. How did you get to Japan? How did that come about? I'm just curious.
Man, that's the when you meet Japanese people, that's the go-to question for starting small talk. Why did you come to Japan? I don't know is the answer. I really don't. The first time I came here, I was working for my family's company right after college, and the company got sold.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to go to the company that was buying it because it was in Phoenix, Arizona, which is not my favorite place. I didn't want to go with that company, so I kind of figured, I'll take my severance, and I've always wanted to do a bit of traveling, and I just kind of want to find a spot in the world where I'm going to get off the plane and not know the first thing about it. So I sent applications to teach English in Japan, Thailand, Taiwan, China, and a couple other places. I forget what all of them were, but a whole bunch. And Japan offered me a job first, so I just jumped on it,
That's cool.
not knowing what I was getting into, and just got super super lucky. I think they sent me to Kobe after I told them I don't care where I go. They
Mm-hmm.
sent me to Kobe, which I'm convinced is the best city in Japan. Um, and I stayed for. I meant to stay for a year. I stayed for 3, and
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, that's how I came to Japan the first time. And then I went back and traveled around a bit and decided that I was getting old and it was time to start taking life seriously. Of all the places I'd been, I liked Japan the most, so
So you
came
left
back.
and came back to Japan.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
cool.
This is my second time, man.
So you have probably like a full-on friend group there and stuff now, right?
Yeah, we've got a great little community here. We I mean, right now it's everything's shut down for COVID, so it's kind of rough. But uh, like, there's a bunch of foreigner-owned bars around Kobe. It's a very unusual density of foreigner-owned bars here, and so we all kind of know each other. And like, I work in one of the bars on Friday nights just for fun,
Mm-hmm.
and and on Sunday nights one of the bars has board game night, and so we all go and play, esoteric board games, and we
Oh,
got
so you
our
have like a
Dungeons and
community
Dragons
of
groups
like
and everything going.
you have like a community of foreigners, basically. That's
It's
cool.
not all foreigners. Like, I mean, it's yeah. I couldn't explain it. It's like each event or place has its own kind of signature for what kind of people show up. And some of them, it's like there's a bunch of foreigners there, but everybody's speaking Japanese. At other ones, it's all foreigners. At other ones, a whole bunch of Japanese people who speak great English show up. It's
Wow.
just, yeah, it's a bizarre thing.
So you don't have any um do you have like any like game development communities that you're part of or were a part of
Yeah,
before COVID?
not in Kobe, but Osaka has a really great Facebook group called Kantaru,
Mm-hmm.
which is focused mostly on speaking game devs in Japan.
Oh, wow. English
And
speaking game devs.
yeah, very specific. Yeah, but it's a remarkably large group because since the early days of Nintendo, there's actually been a history of importing developers to work on games. So Japan actually kind of has a history of bringing people in.
Wow, that's super interesting. That's
So
not
there's
something
been
a
an
lot of
English speaking,
yeah.
yeah,
That's super
and so
cool.
Kantaru is quite good. And then there's a newer one called Pixel something, 1 Pixel. I forget, but yeah, that one's more Japanese focused, and it's more professional. I've only been there once, but
Yeah.
still good.
One of the things I miss about living in Southern California was groups like that. Here in Hawaii, in Maui particularly, we have like a standing population of like 60,000 and there's no game dev community at all. There is like some programming groups and stuff that I actually am involved in. I'm like I administrate over and I lead some of them. But as far as like games, there's nothing like that. And that's in San Diego. I wasn't actually in the game dev community. I wish I had discovered it earlier, but I was in a lot of programming groups and web development groups. I was an organizer in the WordPress San Diego group, and I really miss that part. So if you are in like a city, that's like one of the major perks for me is being able to find somebody who find a group of people, more than one person, who have that like super particular interest that you have. Like
I mean, you got to start it, man. You got to start that
I
up. I'm
did
sure you'll
actually,
find people.
I did actually
Okay.
start one like a week, about a year ago, and I'm sure you can imagine. I had the full on the page, and I had about 15 members, and we had our first meetup scheduled, and then yeah, the world kind of changed. So maybe I'll go back to it now.
Right.
However,
Yeah, I don't. Sorry.
I do have a community of game developers, but they're all my students because I teach to middle school and high school, kind of as like an extracurricular activity. So, the one thing that's nice about that is I have people who can somewhat understand how some of the things I'm doing are like work, and they can appreciate it in a way that, and it's people that I know in real life. So, I mean, there's lots of people online that have that with, but some real life people really. I think it's important for your psychological health to kind of be involved
Yeah.
with and share with and all
Well,
that
and
stuff.
that's what's so cool about this Kantar group is like I've been to like game dev meetups where it's very structured and it's like, okay, we're going to play this member's game now, and we're going to talk about what it is, and this is some new Unity technology that somebody's going to do a presentation on. And then, like, those are great, don't get me wrong, it's very cool that people do those and they're all really useful. But this Kantar group is just like, let's all just drink and talk about games, and if you have a game, come show it to us. Like, it's very
Yeah,
casual,
there's no like big
you know.
corporate initiative. I mean, sometimes you need
Right.
that. Like, you need a big sponsor to kind of be able to get the venue and lunch and stuff. But
Right. Yeah, but that's, I think, and there's a place in the world for that. But I think the real advantage is just taking, because one of my biggest frustrations in life is I'll write some piece of code or make some piece of architecture that I think is the coolest thing I've ever seen, and then there's just nobody around me who could even start to understand why it's cool,
mm-hmm. I feel the exact
And
same way.
so,
That's why I stream on
yeah,
Twitch. That's really why I stream, so that there's people around who can at least appreciate like what
yeah,
I'm doing.
exactly. And like the little kid inside of me needs somebody to pat me on the back and say, "Wow, great job." So it's like it's nice to just have people around who understand what I'm doing.
And also, furthermore, I actually enjoy seeing what other people are doing, and
Yeah,
and it encourages me. Like, the reason I started doing dev is I played my friend's RPG Maker game, who comes to my stream regularly. He wasn't my friend at the time, but I was like, man, I could do this. I could make a game similar to this. I could do something kind of cool like this, and it kind of inspired me to try it, and that's how I got into dev, and that was with RPG Maker. And then
yeah,
since then I've learned how to use Unity pretty well, and a couple other, and my C# has kind of gotten pretty good. So it's just kind of that one random thing. So yeah, I get inspired by others, and I also do like to share what I'm doing. Okay, so
yeah.
we haven't even talked about Ludum Dare yet, so we should talk about that. That's what I'm supposed to make this video about.
That's all
Um,
right. Let's do it.
but yeah, first, me and Quinn met online through Twitch when he was streaming for. Well, I think I was streaming, kind of trying to learn a bunch of crap before Ludum Dare started, because I was going to use Unity, and at that point, I'd only used Unity for like 2 weeks or something. So I was just trying to find the fast and dirty route to like throw something together. And he was doing this ice game. Well, he didn't actually start the game yet, but he was making this game about a guy who gathers ice from planets, which is like the weirdest thing. And I'm like, this guy's cool. This is a this is a this is a cool thing I could kind of get on board with. I mean, but it's so funny. But yeah, so he made that game. Anything else you want to talk about for Ludum Dare's 47?
For 47, let's see. Yeah. So for 40, I learned a lot in Ludum Dare 47, Ludum Dare 47.
Yeah, whatever.
And yeah, the thing that I learned the most, and that I'm learning it now that I'm playing and rating so many games this year or this time, is these little. I think this is a mistake we made this year too. I'll come back to it, but these little like uh, pieces. Like, you think to yourself, well, how am I going to get my game head and shoulders above the other games, right? What am I going to have in my game that's going to blow people away? And you spend all this time on this like kind of really hard to achieve polish type stuff before you focus on. Hang on, give me 1 second. Give me a second. Boyfriend duties.
Oh, cool, man. I'm sure
Um,
there's a woman in the chat who appreciated the full body view, or a man, for that matter.
oh, it's not that good of a phone. Yeah, it's like that's why my camera's right where it is. I look great from here up, you know.
Oh, really? You're like that guy who just does curls on one side and then always is looking at you from that angle
Yeah, that's right.
all
Yeah.
day long.
um, so anyway, yeah. So you're trying to find that one piece of like this is gonna blow people away, and then you miss the stuff that actually does affect your rating. It's like with Iceman, for example, right? Like there was no win condition.
Mm-hmm.
So people played it and they're like, wow, this is super fun. I like hopping around between all of these planets. And like there were some problems with the like people expected because the planets were all rotating, they expected that they needed to compensate for where they were going, and some people were kind of frustrated, like, yeah, this doesn't seem like it aims me properly.
Yeah, I mean,
And they thought that the getting flung out into space thing was a bug, but it's not. Like that's just how the game works. So there were some things there that I could have play tested and gotten a better feedback on, but there's no way to
yeah.
win. So there were people who spent all this time running around collecting all this ice, and then they're just stuck in a universe with no ice, and they're like, dude, what the heck? And if I were them and nobody was explaining to me, yo, nothing's gonna happen when you get all the ice, I'd be frustrated. Like I'd take a couple stars off of somebody's game for that. I'm like, dude, do you have any idea how much ice I just collected for you? You know.
A
And
scoreboard would
so
have
it's
been
like I
great for that because then a form of winning could just be like, um,
well, it has a scoreboard. Like it tells you how much ice you got.
no, but
It's
like
just that once
I
you
meant
get all
like an
the ice,
API.
nothing happens.
If you set up like an API, would have been really fun because then
No,
people's
there's a million things I could have done. It's
yeah,
not that I didn't think of it, it's that I didn't get to it. I ran
yeah,
out of time because I spent so much time dealing with the dynamics of this guy running around the planets in just exactly the right way, and he still doesn't. Like the
yeah.
controller's all messed up.
You're
So
dealing
it's
with
like
like
deal
astrophysics at at that point.
right, yeah. Well, that's the thing is I couldn't use the physics engine. There are no physics in that game. All the physics are self-coded, right? And
Hmm.
that's the whole problem. I don't know. The thing I learned in Ludum Dare 47 is first take care of all the stuff that's going to piss people off if it's not there. Like first just make it a game.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And then if you have time, add the stuff that's going to blow people away. And I think that was the mistake we made with this one too.
Yeah, I think for me, my game, my goal was more of a personal one to just kind of learn Unity better, and I totally accomplished
Mm.
that. And I don't think my game was good at all, and many people have told me it wasn't good. I played it yesterday just to kind of see what it was like, and I still think it's really like weird and fun, but maybe it's just my own bias because it was a good experience for me. But yeah, I don't think I made a good game. When we started doing this one, I wanted to make a game that was like fun to play, and I knew that we had. I didn't really have an idea of what to do. I just remember I was talking to you, and then there's Leaf who did our music, who I also have had use. I've used his music in a couple of my other little projects, my main game, and then some other like small games I've made. And I knew that he would just be pretty pumped to do it. So that was the main thing because if you have somebody who's not like into it for a game jam, it doesn't matter how good they are at the thing. Um, it's just not going to work because you have to basically work 72 hours for free, and then
Yeah.
you don't get a lot out of it unless you really have that kind of masochism in your heart, which I think we all do. So but anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah,
It
yeah.
is masochism.
No, for sure. You want to torture yourself, and it makes you feel like you're a good person or something because you tortured yourself. Um,
Yeah, I don't know. Like, game jams. It's so funny. Like what motivates people to do game jams? Like for me at least. I'm pretty sure for most other people. Like the thing for me is just after I made a whole game in 72 hours and I get my chin all high. Like it just. What did you do last weekend? Oh, I watched TV. I made a game in 72 hours.
yeah,
I don't know what it is, but it's just something about the narcissism in all of us that feels pretty good about it.
yeah. I kind of like to think of it as like an educational thing. I've actually never made a platformer, at least not really. Only like basically the furthest I've gone with a platformer is to like switch out the um like the the assets on like a template or something, and maybe added like a
Yeah,
punch or something like that. So I've never really
yeah,
done anything like that. So I wanted to see how you would do it. Um, and because a lot of the time I thought it would be like just really easy. I just didn't know what I was doing, and I don't think that's the truth anymore. Now I think it's actually it's it's a it might even be harder than I thought. In a
well,
lot.
that's like platformers are this thing where like if you go to like make your first ever Unity game, right? They'll probably teach you how to make a platformer. Like that's probably what it'll be.
Mm-hmm.
And because platformers making something that counts as a platformer is pretty easy. You can the Unity 2D is actually pretty much set up just to make platformers.
Yeah.
The problem is making a good platformer, because in order to make that sort of low-hanging fruit platformer that Unity's sort of designed for, you have to use Unity's physics system, and you have to lean on it pretty hard. And if you do that, you can make something that counts as a platformer really quickly, which is why we see like there's a ton of platformers in Ludum Dare 48 right now that
Mm-hmm.
were clearly made by people where they're like, this was them getting their head around Unity for the first time, right?
Yeah.
But to get super tight controls down to the frame accuracy on the animations, like the kinds of things you get with games like Celeste and Metroid and things where it's just a super tight precision platformer
Mm-hmm.
that feels fair, that's very, very, very hard.
Yeah.
And
Like
that's the mistake we made.
it's like they're one of those genres where like the everything has to be so tight. I mean it's
Yeah,
I would say the only time you have a tighter situation is with fighting games where you don't move around, you know? Cuz fighting games are
yeah,
like but platformers are basically fighting games, but there's just more variety of play in like environmentally, you know what I mean? That they're
yeah,
very similar. Um where fighting games you'll like literally have like 15 frames for like a punch that lasts less than a millisecond, you know, where sometimes
yeah.
they'll cap over that 60 mark just to be careful, and it's
Right.
like it gets pretty nuts. And I can see even with my animation. By the way, if for those of you watching, I did the animation. He did most of the Unity implementation, and then Leaf did the songs and some of the sound effects that we didn't actually ever implement. So the
Yeah, yeah, fair enough.
first day we got together, and we decided to do like a platformer basically. Well, it wasn't really like we wanted to do a platformer. I think that was me. I can't even remember at this point. It might have been me who just pushed that. I in my head I just wanted to make like a sexy pixel babe. That was like really all I wanted. And then you guys had some weird idea with like a refrigerator. I don't remember who came up with that or whatever.
I
Um,
think we were, yeah, I think we were just joking about our previous games, and we were saying, you want to make a Dante's Inferno game, and I must want to make something about ice, and I think that's how we came up with it.
Yeah, so he had an ice game in the previous one, and then we made ice the main character of the game for this one, which was the weirdest thing. They were ice cube girls, like sexy babes made of ice with ice cubes on their bodies. I don't know. It's like the weirdest. It was super weird. A lot of people complained that it was too weird, but it, whatever. Tried to be memorable. But yeah, so we kind of came to the idea that we are gonna do that. And then you came up with the idea. I'm pretty sure, Quinn, of having it be where you control two different characters, and there'll be some
Right.
interaction, almost like a puzzle, where you need to do one thing with one in order to do something with the other. And I think
Yeah.
that was actually one of the best ideas for the whole thing because it was one of the things that made it like just not a platformer, you know. But then it
Yeah, it's a different thing than other games. Yeah.
yeah, it was very unique in that sense, which is probably why it was pretty difficult to execute. So then we got started. I just started making frames of art. The first day I just did like a running animation. I think maybe you wanted to do a jump animation with an up animation, a, a horizontal animation, and a down animation,
That
which
was
I thought,
probably a mistake.
yeah, because you have to make conditions for that to work with every single other animation. So by complicating the jump animation, you increase the scope of the project exponentially from there forward. And
That's right.
there was other things like that. But yeah, so we did like a multiple jump, which looks really cool. Don't get us wrong, but by doing that, we made a situation where it's really difficult to make it work in all the different situations. And then we're like, okay, well, what if you jump off something? Then you have to do like the front animation into the down animation. So you got to program all those conditionals. And the next thing you know, you're just like, holy shit. Jump and
There's code strategy that it's like there are architecture choices we could have made that I should have made, um, that would have handled that better. Um, what I yeah the way that I set up my state machine was kind of like the quickest and dirtiest state machine.
mm-hmm.
Um,
And that can work for Ludum Dare. It's just
Right, and that's kind of what I was thinking. I'm like, oh, it's a jam game. We'll keep it down to a state machine that it just is sequential, and I'll I'll deal with prioritization of signals later.
hmm
Like I'll just do that on a state by state basis.
yeah, totally
The
makes
right
sense.
way to do it would have been to have like have my signal manager be ha, have have states able to sort of register priorities for signals with the signal manager,
hmm
um, in a way that it would have been very very quick to establish. Like for example, like if you're jumping, right? If you're jumping and your velocity changes such that you now need to have the downward jump
hmm
animation, right? And in the same frame, you contact the jelly, right? Should you go into the downward fall state or should you go into the jump into a jelly state?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
and it gets
And
crazy from
obviously,
there.
you need to jump into the jelly state. But if I had built into the system from the beginning a prioritization situation, then I could just say contacting jellies is higher priority than jump
hmm
animations, and then I would never have to worry about that for any other state again.
hmm
Right? It would just be built into the signal of contacting jellies that outranks all those things, and then it would have been a breeze to get the rest of that stuff done. It wouldn't have increased exponentially like that because I'm solving problems where the problems actually exist.
Yeah, and you create a situation that allows for those problems to
Right.
come.
Instead of having to dictate in every single state what the highest priority is, I can just say this event is priority XYZ.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So we kind of did that. We just kind of did some quick and dirty movement. I think on the first day, all we had done is like you could move around and jump maybe. And I think we finished the entire jump animation with the three different idols in the air, um, which was pretty. And then we were feeling pretty good at that point. We were like, "Wow,
Yeah.
this is awesome. We got this." You know, like let's do it.
Yeah.
And so in the morning, I remember I started making like a kick animation before you were awake in your Japan time, and I kind of
Yeah.
gave that to you, and then and then I figured out it was a similar thing art wise because I actually did quite a bit of art. I don't mean to sound like cocky, but I haven't really seen anybody who's done like that I could tell has done like comparable, but not like a lot more art than I did. You know what I mean? There are people who did more,
Yeah.
but
I'm trying to
it was
think.
either like a team. Um, we ended up having to speed up some of the animations to get it to work mechanically, but at the end of it, I did like almost 140 frames, and then tile
Yeah.
sets in addition to that. Granted, they're pretty low res. They were all like around 100 pixels ish, maybe 56 pixel is tall or wide, but it was a lot of art. I mean, if I could keep that kind of output on my game, I would have been done with all of the new art I'm implementing, like months ago. So it was a pretty tremendous undertaking. And
Well, I mean, then, like, I don't mean to interrupt you because I know we're still talking about Ludum Dare, but like, tell me when you're gonna get the game when that art for the game that you're working on. Figure out how many frames you need to make for the game you're working on.
mm-hmm.
Do the math to figure out what that equates to if you were producing at the same rate you were for Ludum Dare. Give me a date, and if you don't get it done by that date, you owe me $100.
What? maybe maybe we'll do something where yeah, well, I mean, it part of it is I'm getting better at pixel art. I only really started doing pixel art and game art because I wanted to make games. It wasn't like I'm an artist who also makes games. I wanted to do games and then I also make art, and a lot of people think the art is pretty good. So I'm like, I'm just gonna keep doing it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
But I don't
Right.
really have a dream of being a game artist. But anyway, that being said, I'm better at pixel art and pixel art animation now than I've ever been. And not to say I'm like the
Mm.
best, I don't really feel that way, but I am definitely still improving. So part of it is I didn't have the aptitude, I didn't have the competency to do it as we were going, and then combine that with the pressure of a jam as well, and working with a team as well kind of made it so I wanted to finish everything too because I didn't want to like be the weak link in the chain, you know. But I think making like everything really quickly was really good, and we used everything I think, but some of them we would speed up so fast where they were super unnecessary. But I was like,
Right.
"Oh, whatever,
Yeah.
you know, that wasn't that big of a
Yeah.
deal." We even had
Yeah.
like a big slime that I made, and we ended up just putting it on like the credit screen. Just it kind of
The
seems
big jelly. Yeah, the
yeah,
big jelly.
which I probably spent more time on than any single asset in the game. No, not probably.
Yeah.
Definitely, I spent more time on that jelly. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so basically the second day we were just trying out stuff. We implemented like a punch, a kick. I think I might have finished the jump kick by the end of the day, and you might have had it in there. And then we were still feeling pretty good, like we're gonna get everything done. And then we went into. Do you want to talk about the second day at all?
Trying. I mean, it's all such a blur to me. I don't know if I know exactly when the second day started and ended.
For you, it kind of didn't.
Yeah,
Just went straight to the third.
I was kind of full on. Um, I'm trying to think where we went from feeling good about where we were to not feeling so good about where we were.
I feel like we
And I
felt
think
good.
that's right
Yeah,
about the end of the second day. Yeah.
I think. Well, I
Right,
think I.
right when it was becoming clear that I like maybe right after dinner on the second day when I came back and looked at what needed to be done, I was like, okay, like this is doable, but we can't add anything else to this list. This is the maximum amount of doable
Mm-hmm.
things, and that list was already too long. I figured out within a few hours.
Yeah.
Uh,
One of the snags I think that kind of affected us too was that I figured out that I wasn't able to use the sprite editor on the when you uploaded it to GitHub for whatever reason. And I still haven't figured that out, but that made it so
yeah,
I wouldn't be able to implement like tiles, or I couldn't because before I was like, well, if he gets stuck, I can just like set up the animation so that he can just drop them in, you know, or whatever. And I wasn't able to do any of that on my end, which is kind of a problem. Like if I had been
yeah.
able to do the level design while you were um, or maybe not WoW, but I would have probably
No, that's
had those levels set up like
yeah,
days before because I would have thought of that as like a more of a priority. But um, the fact that I wasn't able to help in Unity as much as I would
yeah.
have liked to, I think really was. I was like towards the end of the jam, I was
I,
like making the page and stuff, which doesn't really matter at all for the long
yeah.
run. So the
No,
page,
I totally agree that we would have been in a totally different situation at the end if we had spent some time at the beginning, sort of working out our workflow, so
mm-hmm,
that we all could have had access to the Unity project at the same time. Because a lot of my time was spent, importing sprites and slicing up sprite sheets, which it has to get done. I don't mind doing it, but
if
if
you have
there's a
somebody
way that
else who
we
can
can
do it. And
spread that around,
I had to
yeah,
be there to dictate a lot of this stuff about how to format it and stuff because I have like an artistic vision, you know. So like I did kind of go back and fix that stuff a little bit post jam, like. But yeah. So anyway, towards the end, it was maybe about 6 hours left. I remember talking to you, and you still sounded pretty confident. I wasn't feeling confident at all at that point, and I was just trying to stay positive and not drag down because I knew that at that point there was pretty much nothing I could do. So I was just
yeah.
trying
I
to hang
think I
out.
was trying to be confident, even though in the back of my head I knew we were in
You
trouble.
know, we bit off a little bit more than we can chew, but
Yeah,
you know, we got something up, so that was cool. I kind of went after the jam started, and you know, there were some things I wanted that I knew how to do very quickly that didn't have to do with breaking up sprites. So I was able to just download the GitHub project, and I wanted to change the camera, and I wanted to make the pixel alignment a little bit better with the camera resolution and some other stuff. Pretty minor stuff. I did some adjustments to the particles. All pretty minor things that you can do really fast. I added the little meat guys at the bottom. I wasn't really able to animate them because I couldn't import new sprites. Well, I kind of could, but I would have to import frames individually, and I couldn't
yeah.
do anything with like physics or like a collision because. But I did put. I don't know if you saw. I did put the meatball guys at the bottom. They're just standing like idly. They don't move. so so
No, I
they're in
haven't
there.
seen that yet.
Yeah, and I just adjusted the volume because a lot of people were complaining that it was too loud. But yeah,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. Sorry. By the way, Leaf. Sorry for leaving the music implementation till the end there. I needed another probably just hour
Yeah.
and it would have the layering would have been not a tragedy. So for anybody who's played our game and noticed that the music was a problem, that's on me
Yeah,
for sure.
I basically just made it so that the main track is like 5 times louder than all the other ones. So even if they get a
That's a
little
good
bit
idea.
unsynced, it still sounds fine because it just sounds like a little bit of an echo. You know what I mean? Since there's like a dominant track. So it sounds fine now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've looked into it. I mean, I'm not a music guy. I don't know the first thing about music mixing and all that kind of stuff. But like, the music should be increased. Like right now, it's increasing on a linear scale. Like the
Mm-hmm.
volume increases on a linear scale, and it should be increasing on a logarithmic scale. And there should be um, like the total volume of all of the tracks playing should sum to zero or something like that. Like there's
Yeah.
all this math involved in good
I
mixing
I
that
really think
when we're
we
not
should
doing
have
any of it.
I think we should have just had him pre-mix 4 tracks with the additional instrumentation in them, and we just go from one
Switch
to the
between them.
yeah, and it would identically sound exactly the same, and it would.
Yeah, I
And
mean, yeah. It. I don't. Well, let me think about that for a
I didn't
second.
really
Yeah,
realize
you're
that.
right. It would have saved us some math. Um, it would have very dramatically changed the loading time. But game jam game. Who cares about loading time?
Well, yeah. Well, I would still have them all playing at the same time. I would just mute one and then play the other, and then mute one and play the next.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it would have increased the loading time. Actually, it's the same number of tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
It'd be probably the same, but it would be more robust. But anyway, there's a couple different things we realized after we did it. But it was really like the last hour. I felt like that's when we realized we were really down to the wire, and I don't think we're gonna get everything we wanted in there. Not even, well, not even close. But there was still a lot of things that we wanted to do that weren't gonna get in, and it was never something where we kind of intended to kind of work on the project after it was over. So, we got it up. I felt good about it when we posted it. I got some of the feedback, and it was like these little things. And if it was something easy, I would just go change it. But, some of the stuff. Another thing that I think really kind of snagged us is I was really pushing for the control, the gamepad control. And then when you implemented that, it kind of hurt the keyboard control unknowingly because we didn't even test the keyboard control,
Right
and it made it lag
after. Yeah.
because we figured it was still good because it was good at first, and then which I kind of regret. I'm like, we probably would have been better off just to leave the keyboard how it was because most of the
Yeah.
people are playing with the keyboard anyway. I just had this vision of like a using a gamepad because I prefer to use gamepad, but that was probably something we could have not done and saved some better ratings or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, but or it's like this is all Captain Hindsight stuff. It's like if the keyboard thing hadn't gotten snagged the way that it did, then maybe the people who played it with a gamepad would have been super stoked on it, and it would have been the thing that made. It's like when you're making these decisions ahead of time, you never know what's going to be the thing.
mm-hmm.
You know.
Okay, cool. Well, after that, let's talk about after we played. I played about 15 games. Based on our rating, it looks like you played about 25, which is awesome. Thank you for doing that, by the way. Um,
I played another four last night, so I
so you're
think I'm
almost
up
up
to
to
like
30.
30.
Yeah, so you got to play
Yeah.
30 games. That gives us more visibility. Don't look at the Ludum Dare comments because I have a game to play about that. If you didn't look at them yet today, because but we'll do that in a little bit to kind of end
Okay.
this thing. But so I made a quick trailer just because I needed to practice. Well, it's cool, but I needed to practice um, DaVinci Resolve, the new editor, because I don't use Premiere anymore. So I was like, yeah, I'll
Yeah.
just make one for this, and that was good. I learned. I made like it's like 105 or a minute and 5 seconds. So I made a little trailer, which nobody in Ludum Dare has a trailer that I've ever even heard of. So so that was cool, and I made some pretty spiffy gifs. The work you put in was playing people's games, which helps us get a higher coolness score and shows people that it helps basically increase the visibility of the game, which is great. And
Didn't feel like work, dude. It was a blast.
I know you're having a lot of fun. I was like, this is great. I would have been during those times you were doing that. I would have been streaming, but I was just watching yours and like either editing or working on the gifs or whatever. So it was all good. I appreciate it. It made more sense for me to try to stream when you're not streaming, which is kind of what I did. Which is part of why I have less, but it's also part of why we have like a sweet page. We got like sweet gifts that I posted
Page
everywhere.
looks great.
Yeah, I posted
Yeah.
them on Reddit, and everything looks pretty good. So
That's crazy how much work you've got on that stuff.
yeah, yeah, that's what I was doing when you're playing all the games. That's why it's cool to work with a team because you can have somebody else play, and then I can, make the page look nice. Because I want to leave it up there, and I think people will be playing it for a while. If, for example, people were to like start a petition and there was like 100,000 names on it, maybe we'll make it. Maybe we'll make it good, or I will, or you will, you know. But
Give me 100,000 names on any game, dude, and I'll do whatever it takes. With 100,000 names, there's money to be made.
yeah,
For
I
sure.
don't think. But we both have our own projects and stuff. So for those of you who really like the game, make sure to let us know in the comments or whatever, or shoot us or come by our streams when we stream and let us know that you liked it. Even if you're watching this video like way later and you go play it, and very clearly we understand there's problems, but we just have other things we need to invest in. So what I did, Quinn, for my little game is I took all the complaints that people had about our game, and there's three
Uh,
categories. There's there's like the ones, the minor ones, right? And then there's the really gnarly ones.
like nasty comments.
Well,
People leave
no,
nasty
no, no.
comments.
They gave us like negative feedback, well, feedback, but negative feedback nonetheless. Like they said,
Yeah.
and I basically kind of, and the way I'm gonna do it is I have like the pretty minor stuff, which was like 1 to 2 people, and then there's the
Uh-huh.
medium stuff, which people complained about, which is like 2 to 3, and then
Yeah.
the really rough ones, which are 5 to 6.
Okay.
And I'm gonna have you guess which are which, and then we'll
All
call it a
right.
day. Okay, so
I'll call it without you even reading them off. I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna call it right now.
no,
Five. The 5 to 6. The 5 to 6 one is that there's no indicator for switching characters.
hmm well, yeah, no, that
Am I
I'm
right?
making it so there's like the ones that are hard, the ones that people really got bothered by. They're all in the same category. So yes,
Oh, I
that's
see.
right,
Okay.
but you're gonna have to see which one bothered them more of the stuff because that way it'll be actually be a little bit harder to guess. I think if it was just like which one do they really
Okay.
hate
Okay.
and
Okay.
which one. So okay, so the first one is that these are like the minor complaints. People were saying one that the pushing animation was silly because there was nothing to push. That kind of frustrated them, which is like what? Why do you care about that? And then another person said that they didn't like the animation and the art, which is obviously ridiculous. Okay. They probably didn't like the butts. Probably made them feel uncomfortable. And then there was the collisions need improvement, and they were referring mostly to attacks and getting killed. So they felt that it was not like accurate enough. And then the other one was accidental jelly entry. People wanted like a better system for entering jelly. So these are the minor ones. Two of them have more people who complain than the other. Do you have any guesses?
To the Give me a recap. It was the art.
Pushing
It was
animation
the
unnecessary, animation
pushing
and art,
animation.
collisions, and then accidental jelly entry.
Accidental jelly entry is definitely the most frustrating of those.
Okay. So that's one of so two of them have two complaints and two of them have one. So let's see if you can guess the other.
Two of them have two, and two of them have one.
Yeah, so you got one of the two. That's right. Of the four, I guess.
Then the colliders would be the other two.
Okay.
The attack
Of
colliders.
course. So your perception lines exactly up with what people said. One person said pushing animation was annoying. One person said the art and the animation needs work. Two people said the collisions need improvement, and two people said that the accidental jelly entry was frustrating. Okay, so the next
I'm
three.
surprised it's only two for the accidental jelly entry.
Well, we only had like we had 26 people comment on the game so far when I
Even
checked.
so, yeah.
Um,
It's the number one thing that I would have commented about on our game.
yeah. So the next three were music volume, the lack of sound effects, and the inability to switch your character mid-action.
inability to switch a character mid-action is, I think, the top of those. And then probably music volume.
Yeah. Well, actually, more people complained about sound effects than music volume, but sound effects and not being able to switch your character was an issue. And I think there's a reason for that is because I made a trailer with sound effects, which set people up with the expectation that they would be there. And the music volume I
Yeah.
fixed. So,
Right.
so you're right. I think with the original release, definitely. But
Yeah.
after I sabotaged us and then kind of fixed the music, changed it is a better word than fixed. I changed it. So I agree with you. I would have thought the same exact thing, but some of these comments came in like
Like
well
after
after
the
I'd made those
music thing was
changes.
resolved.
So the
Yeah,
last
yeah,
one,
yeah.
the brutal brokenness is the sluggish controls, um, the indication of the currently controlled
because of the
character.
keyboard thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and and then ironically we had a good amount of people who only said nice things. So they didn't say any negative things. So we have sluggish controls, indication of currently controlled character, and people who only said nice things.
I'm gonna I'm gonna um I'm gonna have some confidence in myself here. I'm gonna say that nice things is the largest category.
uh,
Um,
Actually, it tied for the best with one of the other two.
okay, and the other ones, sorry, were sluggish controls and character indicator.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say character indicator is bothered more people than sluggish controls.
Yeah, those gamepad people. So yeah, that's right. The sluggish controls bothered 5, and the indication
Uh-huh.
of the currently controlled character um, bothered 6, and
Yeah.
the people who just said nice things were 6. People who just gave us compliments.
So yeah. So the thing that I take away from that is I think that we had actual conversations about all of those things before the jam was over, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think like it's stuff that we definitely would have done if we had time. It's not that we, you know, totally missed it. Like holy crap, I never thought of that.
Yeah, none of it was that. Every single
Yeah,
one of these
which I
things
think
we
is
wanted to implement. The
right.
collisions, for example, could see why people would be frustrated because they are big. But I remember we talked about it, and your idea was big is safe. So it is true.
Yeah.
Like if you do the kick, you can like do it where you don't even touch them by a large margin, not a super large margin, and that's fine. We
Yeah.
just wanted to make it so that people don't get mad. And it's also one of those things where
Right.
some with collisions, people will always be like, "That's too close," or "That's too far." He didn't even touch him, or "I touched him," or so.
Yeah.
Everybody's gonna have a different opinion about that. I think universally, I agree that the indication of the currently controlled character would be the most significant fix. The inability to switch, for example, mid character, I think would be alleviated if you could see which character you're controlling when you switch. So I think less people would have. It's one of those problems that creates the perception of another problem. So if people say, "Oh, I would like to be able to switch more quickly," they would feel like they have more control if the indication was more clear on who they're controlling. Like it might
Yeah.
make it so they don't complain about that other thing, and like the sluggish controls. That was just a matter of like,
That's just time.
yeah,
That's just a matter of that's playtesting and time. That's
yeah.
all that
We just
takes.
didn't even know when we first posted. We didn't even know that was an issue. I didn't
Right.
even know until like 24 hours because I remember my friend Anchor was commenting that the controls were sluggish, and I was like, no way. I don't even remember what I said in the chat, but I was like, no, that's
Yeah.
not true. I like got all defensive, and it turns
Yeah.
out he was right. I was like, oh wow, I guess
Yeah, there's some problems with the keyboard controls for
we
sure.
fixed it and then broke it. But anyway, so that was cool. So I don't really think we need to go any longer on this. I think I can get some pretty good content out of it. So unless
Nice.
you have anything you want to say.
I had a blast, man. I had a great time on this game jam. Like it got crazy at the end, and we didn't get everything done. But I don't think anybody's ever gotten everything done in a game jam
Yeah,
before.
I learned a
But
lot. I think as a whole for me, it's actually the first time I've collaborated on a game in my life.
yeah,
So it was very interesting on how to manage like the emotional Um, you know, it had a clear end, but I can imagine if it was like, say for example, three partners on a game that you're going to be working on for years, it could get pretty intense, you know. And not to say
Oh,
that it got
sure.
that intense for us, it really didn't. But I could just see now, because I have had long term partners in other businesses, and it's like you're married to somebody, you know,
Yeah.
to a certain
Yeah.
extent. It
Yeah.
it's like
It gets stressful, man.
you're married to somebody, but you may not like them quite as much of your wife as your. It's like a yeah.
Yeah.
It can just get intense. So that was kind of something. Just as like a sidetrack story, I had a pretty successful business with some friends, and I got kind of ousted, kind of towards the end of it, and they're still going strong. I'm not gonna say what the business is, but ever since then, I've done everything pretty much independently, or I've worked for like a big corporation, you know. And
Yeah.
this particular jam was significant for me because it was a form of collaboration on something I was passionate about that I haven't really been able to try for a good amount of time, you know. So I think it was
Yeah.
good for me to kind of open up and allow myself to let other people take care of other things in a project that I'm somewhat managing. It was a kind of a co-managed thing, but still, it was good for me in that way. They're not going to do compo anymore, right? Like, so I'll probably
I don't
collaborate
think
again.
so.
If they did a compo,
Yeah.
I'd probably want to do one myself. We'll see where we're at. Maybe we'll do it together. Then we'll talk when we get closer. Um,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't have any plans for the next jam. It's a long ways off.
yeah, I'll
But
message you when we get
yeah,
close. And
I
we'll,
keep hearing rumors. Like I haven't gotten it straight from the horse's mouth yet about whether or not Compo is dead.
if compo goes again, I might want to try to do a compo. I feel pretty much like I could do it now.
I mean, you can like you can just do Compo rules of your own accord. You know, nobody's stopping you.
That's definitely true. And yeah, I definitely can. I won't, but I can. Okay, cool. But okay, cool. So great stuff. Thank you, Quinn, for doing the talk. Hopefully, this comes out good.
Yeah,
I'll see you later, man.
enjoy
It's,
enjoy the editing.
it's been
Right
a
on. All right,
blast.
see ya.
Later. Close the call.